Why is this computer? This computer needs to be out.
No, I don't think so.
We're just waiting on one more scoring judge, everyone. So once that panelist gets here, we'll get going. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Judge Barrett. We're on the record in 20 CR 3103. This is the people of the state of Colorado versus Avery Becker. Before we begin, I do want to ensure that everyone is ready to go for trial. I'll start with the prosecution.
We are ready, Your Honor.
All right. And for the defense.
We're ready, Your Honor.
For the prosecution at this time, can you let the parties know and let me know for the benefit of our record keeping who will be playing what roles for your case?
Yes, Your Honor.
My name is Bryn Berry, and I will be directing Kyle Cusack and crossing Avery Becker, and I will also be giving the opening statement.
My name is Johnny Flanagan. I will be conducting the direct examination of Alex Fuentes and the cross-examination of Taylor Perkins.
And I'm Asher Goldberg, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Jordan Markowitz, the cross-examination of Blake Van Owen, and I will be delivering the closing statement.
Thank you. And for the defense?
Oh, Your Honor, may our witnesses introduce themselves?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Hi, just to clarify, can you guys see the camera or is it?
That camera appears to be off or closed or blocked in some way.
Okay, we might have to fix this because our video says it's on and our camera is open, but it is not on apparently. Let's see. Here, we apologize. Maybe.
We'll introduce ourselves.
Technical difficulties are the name of the game, so no problem.
Joel, maybe try just like logging into the competition altogether, like close out of all of it and then just log
Okay.
back in.
We'll try that. Thank you.
And while we're waiting for the prosecution witnesses to identify themselves, I'll start with the scoring panelists. Mr. Savage, can you hear me? You're muted, Mr. Savage, but it appears that yes, you can hear me.
Can you hear me?
I am.
Okay.
And just for the benefit of the record, any conflicts that you're aware of?
I'm sorry. No, Your Honor, no conflicts. I did miss the name of the first plaintiff attorney. Can she maybe say her name again?
Yes, go ahead, please.
My name is Bryn Berry.
Brett.
Yeah,
Bryn Berry, and you're breaking up a little bit, Mr. Savage, but luckily you're not putting on any evidence today. So if you have trouble hearing anything, just let me know. Ms. Marisich, you're one of the scoring panelists, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Judge.
And any conflicts, any issues that you're aware of that would prevent you from being fair and impartial in this case?
No, Your Honor.
All right, and good morning to both Mr. Savage and Ms. Marisich. And my third scoring panelist, can you please identify yourself? I don't have your name, unfortunately.
Yes, Judge. My name is Sam Fresher.
All right, good morning to you, sir. Any conflicts that you're aware of that could prevent you from being fair and impartial in this case?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I was wondering if the teams could identify a team code. I see that as a required item to be populated in the scoring sheet here.
All right, for the prosecution, what is your team code?
We are Albert.
Elbert. And for the defense?
We are Creststone.
All right. Now, while we're waiting for the witnesses for the prosecution to get their video up and running, why don't we go ahead and make the most of our time? For the defense, can you please identify the roles each of you will be performing for this proceeding?
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Tess Orr, O-R-R, and I will be delivering the opening statement, the direct examination of Taylor Perkins, and the cross-examination of Alex Fuentes.
All right.
I'm Albert Booth. I will be delivering the cross-examination of Detective Markowitz and the direct of Avery Becker.
My name is Nicholas Huffman. I will be conducting the direct of direct of Blake Van Owen, as well as the cross of Kyle Kuzak, and as well as providing the closing statement.
Your Honor, can our witnesses introduce themselves?
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Juliet Berry, and I will be playing Taylor Perkins.
Good morning. I am Anders Griffin, Griffin, and I will be playing Avery Becker.
I'm Caleb Bell, B-E-L-L, and I will be playing Van Owens.
All right. And for the prosecution, did we get your witnesses up and running?
We are working on that.
Okay.
Okay, they should be up in this second.
Very well.
I'm Joel, and I am Alex Fuentes.
I'm Ellie Burton, and I am Jordan Markowitz.
And I am Connor Branco, and I am Kyle Kuzak.
All right. Well, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and swear everyone in according to the rules. So I'll start with the team members. Please raise your right hands for me. Do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Witnesses, if you could please raise your right hands. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? If so, say yes.
Yes.
Your Honor.
All right. Since we don't have any gallery members, I'll skip that and I'll go to the scoring panelists. Could you please raise your right hands? Ms. Marisic, I cannot see you. And Ms. Marisic, is that your left hand or your right hand? All right. Scoring panelists, do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all very much. Are there any preliminary matters we need to address for the purposes of the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Pursuant to Rule 4.6, we would like to introduce the stipulations to the court.
All right. Very well. Go ahead.
And we also, or I request that any time remaining at the end of the closing statement be saved for a rebuttal.
The stipulations are accepted, and any time left over will be reserved for rebuttal. Anything else?
No.
All right. For the defense, any preliminary matters that you'd like to address?
No, Your Honor.
Very well. At this time, are the people prepared to give an opening statement?
Yes, I just need to change my name.
All right. I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you said. I heard yes, and then you said something after that, and I didn't hear it.
I need to change the name on Zoom.
All right, Ms. Berry, whenever you're ready, you may go ahead and give your opening statement.
May it please the court. Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel, thank you for being here today. I will start with a story. Once upon a time, there was a boy who loved mock trial. He could make up a closing just by listening to the opposing counsel's case. He could know what he wanted his witness to say and could make them say it almost magically. He felt that because of his natural talent, he did not need to put in large amounts of work during practice, so he didn't. His coach, however, disagreed. His coach told him every practice that he needed to work harder and that real attorneys and real cases did not make up their stories on the spot, because if they did, the judge and the jury would see right through them. This made the boy mad. It made him resent his coach for the constant provoking and pushing him to be better. This resentment festered and grew inside of the boy over the years used in mock trial until they controlled him. After winning the Best Attorney Award at mock trial regionals, the boy's coach once again got on him for his lack of preparation. The boy's long retained resentment exploded and he grabbed a print marker. He walked up to his coach's beloved white Porsche and wrote Worst Attorney Award across the hood. His coach, who had followed him out, immediately kicked him off the team. He went home and told his mom that he would get back at his coach if it was the last thing he did. Later, he confided in a friend to his plans to trash his coach's house through a text message. Sure enough, on March 6, 2020, a masked and gloved figure matching the boy's figure was seen walking up to his coach's house, around the side gate, and through the back door. His coach, having been warned through their camera security alerts and any noises the boy might have been making, was ready and waiting with a knife upon his entrance. There was a scuffle near the back door that led to the transportation of the knife from the coach to the boy and the ultimate stabbing of the coach by the boy. The puncture made by the knife was fatal, and the boy's coach, for which he had held so much resentment for so long, was now dead. No reconciliation, no state mock trial championship, no happily ever after. The boy in the story I've just told is Avery Becker, the defendant in this case here today. Avery Becker let his resentment control him and led him eventually to kill his mock trial coach, Mackenzie Brackman. Today, we will hear from 6 witnesses, 3 who will prove the story I just told, and 3 who will deny it. We will first hear from Alex Cifuentes, a fellow mock trial member and friend of Avery's mentioned in the story. Alex will confirm Mackenzie Brackman and Avery Becker's unfriendly relationship and provide evidence for Avery's intention to trash Coach Brackman's house. Second, we will hear from Detective Jordan Markowitz, an expert witness who will go into detail about the significant event on March 6th and the important events surrounding it, indicating the defendant Avery Becker as the perpetrator. Third, we will hear from CSR Kyle Kuzak and his opinions once again as an expert witness of the proceedings of the incident on the day March 6, 2020, again pointing to the circumstances and figure of Avery Becker as a perpetrator. Following, in any particular order, will be Avery Becker, the defendant himself, Taylor Perkins, another friend of Avery's and previous member of the mock trial team, and Professor Blake Van Owen, a professor and investigator of crime scenes. Taylor Perkins will attest to Avery and Brackman's disagreeable relationship and assert her own opinions of contempt towards the victim. Blake Van Owen will try to prove that Avery Becker could not have been the murderer, but will be discovered to have holes in his own investigation. Finally, Avery himself will be forced to relate his unfriendly relationship with Brackman and testify of his habit of letting his anger and resentment control his actions. Though it may seem like it, this is not fiction. It is not a mere story. It is a real case with real people, real actions, and real emotions. Someone murdered Mackenzie Brackman, and that person was Avery Becker. The prosecution provides more than sufficient evidence for Avery's sticky relationship with and feelings of intense resentment towards Mr. Brackman, for similar situations where Avery lost control in the past, and for Avery's uncanny person and situation in relation to the perpetrator on the day of the homicide, March 6, 2020. Members of the jury, thank you for being here today and for listening so attentively to the facts of the case as seen by the prosecution. I know you will make the right decision. Thank you.
I was muted. Thank you very much, Ms. Berry. For the defense, Ms. Orr, are you prepared to make an opening statement? If so, you may begin.
All right, thank you. May it please the court. Thank you, Your Honor, members of the jury, and opposing counsel. Mackenzie Brackman was the beloved coach of the Colorado High School mock trial team, the mock trial team that my client, Avery Becker, was on. My client dedicated his high school career to becoming a lawyer. He spent all 4 years in mock trial striving to become a successful lawyer. My client was very good. And unfortunately, that led a lot of people to be jealous of him. And because of that jealousy, he's being falsely accused for murder. Unfortunately, Mr. Brackman and my client did not always see eye to eye, and that did leave a lack of judgment on my client's part. But there is a difference between defacing property and murder. My client is not capable of murdering his mock trial coach, and even though they didn't always agree, does not mean my client would go as far as to stab his coach in the back. Detective Jordan Markowitz rushed through his investigation and rushed his judgment, and now my client is going through a trial of a murder he didn't commit. I ask you to listen during cross-examination because you will hear the holes and the flaws in the prosecution story. All the prosecution has to offer is lying witnesses and a rushed investigation. The prosecution will try and bring up text messages from Alex Cifuentes, but the night of March 5th, my client's phone went missing. And if his phone was missing, how could he have had a conversation through text message with his old teammate? March 5th, 2020 was supposed to be a regular day for the mock trial team and for my client. But Mr. Brackman had gotten into an argument with my client and decided to completely remove him from the mock trial team. The mock trial team that my client spent 4 years receiving awards for his work. My client went outside the school building and wrote Worst Attorney Award on Mr. Brackman's Porsche. Afterwards, my client offered to wash his car and even get a job to pay for the repaint job. He repeatedly apologized, and he feels terrible about his actions. He then went to the fry shack where he saw Alex Cifuentes. He got frustrated with their conversation, ended up leaving his phone at the table while he went to the bathroom. That was the last time my client saw his cell phone. On March 6th, 2020, the day of Mackenzie Brackman's murder, Avery Becker woke up and realized his phone was missing. He went to pick up his friend Taylor Perkins, and they decided to retrace their steps from the night prior and look for my client's missing phone. They went to the local mall, and they burned the whole morning looking for his phone. They then went to the fry shack to talk to the afternoon staff, where they had seen their old mock trial team again, who had decided to go there because Mackenzie Brackham never showed up for practice. The reason Mackenzie Brackham never showed up for practice was because he was lying in his doorway bleeding out. Now, if my client was at the mall all morning with Miss Perkins, how could he have possibly murdered Mackenzie Brackham? When you are called back for deliberation, you will find that the prosecution left holes in their case. You will find the prosecution did not meet the burden of proving, beyond a reasonable doubt, the existence of all necessary elements to constitute the crimes charged. I ask you to find my client, Avery Becker, not guilty of first-degree murder and second-degree burglary. Thank you again, Your Honor, members of the jury, and opposing counsel.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Orr. For the prosecution, Mr. Flanagan, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to call Alex Cifuentes to the stand.
Very well. You may begin when you're ready.
Good morning. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Alex Cifuentes, Sifuentes.
Where do you currently go to school?
I currently go to school at Colorado High School.
Are you involved in any extracurricular activities?
Yes, I'm a proud member of mock trial.
Do you know Avery Becker?
I do. Teammates and really good friends.
Describe to the jury how, well, actually, let me step back a little bit. Were you on the mock trial team with Avery Becker?
I was.
Will you describe to the jury how Avery behaved as a team member?
Avery, let's just say, was never prepared, and she always left the team in a state of anxiety, and real unprofessional, always left us frustrated.
Would you ever describe yourself as a rival to the defendant?
No, I would never. I'd wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. Avery and I were really good teammates and really good friends.
Who is Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman was our beloved coach. May he rest in peace.
Can you describe the relationship between the defendant and Brackman?
Yes, the relationship between Avery Becker and Mr. Brackman was very rocky, very rough. They were always fed up with each other, especially Avery with Mr. Brackman.
Was there ever a time when the defendant was moved from the A team to the B team?
There was. Avery showed up for the umpteenth time. I mean, it's just common of her characteristics, personality.
What happened as a result of this?
After Avery was demoted to the B team, she went to her teammate Taylor Perkins. and had her quit the team in an effort to get back on the A team.
Was Avery ever let back onto the A team?
Avery was let back on to the A team, yes.
What happened after that?
After that, we went to regionals, and Avery, she did very good. She won multiple awards, Best Attorney Award, Best Closing Argument Award, but it wasn't because she worked hard, it's just because she wasn't prepared, but she was able to waltz in with his good looks.
What did Mr. Brackman have to say about these awards?
Mr. Brackman was a little upset with Avery. Mr. Brackman felt that he didn't deserve those awards, given that in the real world, you can't just waltz in unprepared and hope it works out for your client.
How did the defendant respond to Mr. Brackman's statements?
Avery, he became enraged. He took a permanent marker of all things and went out and vandalized Mr. Brackman's Porsche 911 and his cherry ride. It's absolutely outrageous.
What happened as a result of the vandalism?
Mr. Brackman kicked Avery off for good.
Did the defendant ever attempt to get back onto the team?
He did. He came to me asking to talk to Mr. Brackman on his behalf. And, with us being good teammates, I did, but Mr. Brackman just wasn't interested.
Permission to show the court Exhibit 14.
You may.
Do you recognize Exhibit 14?
I do.
What is it?
It is a screenshot of the text messages between Avery Becker and I.
Is this exhibit true and accurate?
It is.
And does this accurately reflect the text messages that Avery sent to you?
They do, down to the point.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 14 into evidence.
Ms. Orr.
I have an objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay.
Mr. Flanagan, what is your response to that objection?
May I confer with my counsel?
Yes.
It's fine.
Chris is going to say something about that.
Your Honor, this is a statement by a party opponent and therefore is not hearsay.
And Ms. Orr, since it's your objection, I'll give you the final word, ma'am.
Your Honor, I have no response.
Very well. I will find that this is not hearsay. The statements contained in this exhibit are statements of the defendant and are therefore not hearsay. So the exhibit is admitted.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Flanagan.
Will you please read these texts to us?
Yes. They say, "Hey, Alex, it's Avery." And I say, "Hey, what's up? I'm sure you're aware that I got kicked off the team. I'm pretty desperate to get back on. Is there any way you would be willing to talk to Coach Brackman about having me back? I don't know. Coach is still pretty upset with you. Come on, please. It's really important to me. I guess I could try, but after the car situation, I doubt anyone could change his mind. Well, if he's upset about his car, then he's going to be really upset when he sees what I do to his house. What are you going to do to his house? I'm going to break in, or I'm going to wait until he's at work, then break in and trash it." End quote.
Thank you. Lastly, do you know Blair Rollins?
Not really. We went to school with each other, but I barely knew him, barely just enough to say hi, passing each other in the hall.
Did you ever at any point steal the defendant's phone and give it to Blair Rollins?
I would never. That's outrageous.
Thank you. No further questions.
Very well. Ms. Orr, would you like to cross-examine this witness? If so, you can do so when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Are you ready? Sorry, we're getting our timekeeper ready.
Very well.
20 minutes. You were on the mock trial team, correct?
Was as a proud member.
And before we go any further, do we need to have the exhibit still projecting, or can we go ahead and take that down? Excellent, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Orr.
Thank you. And you were on the mock trial team with Avery Becker.
I was. We were very good teammates, very good friends.
But you believe the team would have been better off without Avery?
I do. Avery just left us in a constant state of anxiety, always left us, feeling that we weren't prepared, given she wasn't prepared. It's hard for our team. But so with her being gone, it definitely made us feel better for competition,
And after Avery was off the team, you said that you could win the Best Attorney Award. Is that correct?
I felt that I could win the Best Attorney Award with her gone, Without Avery, I had a real chance. I worked hard, and with all my hard work, I felt that I could win Best Attorney, yes.
All right. Now this can just be answered in a yes or no. Do you believe that Avery took mock trial seriously?
Not to the extent she should have, no.
But you believe that you took mock trial very seriously?
I did. I practiced all the time with my family, with my friends, hours and hours, closings, openings, going over and over, practice, while Avery didn't do any.
All right, thank you. And after Avery was kicked off the team, he wanted you to talk to Mr. Brackman, is that correct?
He did.
But you refused?
No, I went and I talked to Mr. Brackman, but he wasn't interested.
And were you excited to take on Avery's role per se?
I was excited for the larger part I'd have. I worked very hard, and finally being able to show my hard work, having that role, I was very excited.
And you had no trouble taking his spot on the team, is that correct?
No, I worked hard, She didn't. I deserved it.
Okay, moving on. After Avery was kicked off the team, you saw him at the Fry Shack, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you sat with him and Taylor?
I did.
And you stated that Avery let you use his phone that night, is that correct?
I did. He let me play a game on it. Pretty fun.
Are you aware that Avery's phone went missing that night?
I am.
And moving on, you stated that we shouldn't trust Avery because of the experience he has on mock trial, is that correct?
That is correct. He would always just make up the most complete absurd lies when he was a witness with mock trial. So I have no problem in seeing that he would do the same here today.
But at this moment, you're a senior still in mock trial, correct?
I am a senior now, yes.
So you would have had the same amount of experience as Avery in mock trial last year.
Yes, but I'd almost say that I had more just because I practice more,
So couldn't that statement also be said about you?
And yeah, hypothetically, yes.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Let me redirect Mr. Flanagan.
Yes, I have a brief redirect.
All right.
You stated that you never had any rivalry with the defendant, correct?
Never. We were very good teammates, always pushed each other to be better.
And although you might have said that you got frustrated at times, you never had any other than that bad feelings towards the defendant, correct?
No, we were good friends. And friends, they can be frustrated with each other. In fact, that might just make you an even better friend.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Any recross, Ms. Orr?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
Go ahead.
Just clarifying, you were excited to take on Avery's role on the mock trial team.
I was very excited. I worked hard for it.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. For the prosecution, your next witness, please. Mr. Goldberg.
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Jordan Markowitz to the stand.
Very well. You may begin your examination whenever you're ready.
Hold on, let me just change my name real quick.
All right. Good morning. Please state your first name and spell your last name for the record.
Jordan Markowitz, Markowitz.
And Ms. Markowitz, what is your profession?
I am a homicide detective with the DPD. I've been working with the Denver Police Department for 13 years now, and I've been a homicide detective for 7 of those years.
And what type of specialized training do you have as a detective?
I specialize in cell phone technology. I have a cell phone technology and forensic data recovery certification from the American Academy of Law Enforcement. I received this from a 3-day course that I took, and then I also had to pass a certification test. From this experience, I learned about different types of cell towers and what data can be obtained from them. I also learned how to use forensic software, such as the Cellbrite system, in order to download information from cell phones.
And how do you use this special training?
I use it every day. I have downloaded the contents of hundreds of phones. I have used cell tower data in over 50 cases. It's a constant thing.
And have you testified in court as an expert before?
I have, yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Detective Jordan Markowitz as an expert in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery.
Mr. Booth, any objection or voir dire?
No objection or voir dire, Your Honor.
All right. The witness is so qualified as an expert in the tendered field. Go ahead, Mr. Goldberg.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, let's talk about today's case. What happened on March 6th, 2020?
On March 6th, there was a passing motorist who reported of someone that was face down laying in their porch. And so the paramedics came, and upon finding the victim, they called in the police. And I was there at I was on the scene about 2:20 p.m.
Your Honor, permission to show what has been marked as exhibits 1 through 6?
Yes, permission is granted.
All right. We can get those. Okay. All right. Do you recognize these pictures?
Yes, those are pictures taken of the crime scene when I got there. This is victim laying down in the doorway in the pool of blood. This is close up of stab wound. This is the knife that I found laying by the victim. And this is the knife.
All right. Now, what did you notice about the residence?
I entered through the back door, and upon arriving into the house, there was the kitchen, and the kitchen was in slight disarray, but I couldn't tell if it was normal state of the kitchen or if there was a sign of struggle. On the counter, I saw a knife block, and there was one knife missing from the knife block. There was also an open knives drawer in the kitchen. I also noticed that there was a chair lying on the floor, like it had been knocked over, and then there was also a plate that was broken on the floor. I also noticed, just to check for signs of robbery, but there were no valuables as far as I could tell that were stolen.
Backing up just a sec, where was the victim lying in relation to the kitchen?
They were lying in the front doorway.
Okay, now permission to show exhibits 7, 8, and 9.
Granted.
All right, and do you recognize these pictures?
I do, yes. Exhibit 7, I believe, was the open knife drawer that I saw in the kitchen. And then Exhibit 8, go down. That is the knife block that I saw on the counter with the missing knife. And then Exhibit 9 is the broken plate on the floor.
All right. And okay, Your Honor, I move to admit exhibits 1 through 9 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections.
Exhibits 1 through 9 are so admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Great. And in the course of this investigation, did you happen to lose any pictures?
Yes, there were some pictures that were taken of the blood splatters that got corrupted in the process.
And do you know how they were lost?
No, they were just lost in the translation of it all.
And how much did those pictures influence your conclusions about this case?
Not at all. They were just pictures of the blood splatter, and it didn't affect my conclusions at all.
Now, did you happen to download the contents of Brackman's phone?
I did, yes. I was able to access Brackman's username and password, and then access his Ring account, and that allowed me to get videos of the intruder all around the house.
Permission to show what is marked as, I believe it's 12, Exhibit 12.
Very well, you may do so.
But don't play it yet, trail technician. Okay, do you recognize this link?
Yes, I do. This is the video of the intruder entering the back door of Mackenzie Brackman's house.
I move to admit Exhibit 12 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 12 is so admitted.
All right, would you please play that for us? Now moving on, what else did you learn from the victim's phone?
From downloading the contents, I was also able to access Mackenzie Brackman's text messages, and I noticed that there were a lot of text messages about something called mock trial. So as a detective, I looked into that, and I found out that there's a mock trial program at Colorado High School, and Mackenzie Brackman was the coach of that.
And who is Alex Cifuentes?
So after I found out that Mackenzie Brackman was the coach, I reached out to all of the team members on this mock trial team, and Alex Fuentes happened to be the first student that I contacted, and he actually gave me one of the biggest breaks in the case.
All right, and would you please describe for the jury how call detail records work?
Yes. So the service provider of the cell phone doesn't record all of the information that is received when a call or a text message is made. There are cell towers, and they record when a call is made and the duration of it, and if it was received. And it also tracks text messages and if they're incoming or outgoing. And they just allow you to find out where the cell phone was when the text or call was made or received.
And what did you find out about Avery Becker's phone?
I found out that there are a lot of text messages and calls coming in. There was nothing going out, but there was calls that were made. They were not received because there was no duration of the phone call. And then there were a lot of text messages coming in from Taylor Perkins' cell phone. I also found that I was able to track where Avery's phone was because of the cell towers and the range that they have.
Permission to show the court exhibits 15 and 16.
Granted.
Okay, do you recognize these?
Yes, these are diagrams of the cell towers that were in the area of Avery Becker's phone.
And admission to, or permission to admit exhibits 15 and 16 into evidence?
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
15 and 16 are so admitted.
Now, what do these maps show?
So the red arches are each of the cell towers in the area and what area they cover. The first one at the top is 1227.3, and then we've got 1191.1, and then we've got 1197.1. And then the times that are underneath the names of the cell towers, that's when there was either a call or a text made during that time. So then we know that the phone was within the area of these cell towers when the call or text was made.
And if you could go down to exhibit 16. What have you drawn here?
This is the course that I drew just to show the most accurate route that I think could have been made of Avery's phone. It starts at the top. We see Becker's house is in the area of the first cell tower where a call or text was made. And then we go down, and then there was also call or text made in the area of 1191.1. And then if we go down, there were 3 text messages or calls made in 1197, which is around the area of Brackman's house.
Thank you. And in your opinion, as an expert, in your expert opinion, what is your conclusion about this case?
From my conclusion, I believe that Avery Becker went to Brackman's house with the intention of trashing it, but then later got there and found that Brackman was there and eventually killed Brackman.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Very well. Mr. Booth, cross-examination, sir.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
All right. So as you said, you took photos of the cast-off marks, correct?
There were pictures taken of blood splatters, yes.
But they were corrupted.
That is correct, but they didn't influence my conclusions at all. They were just pictures of blood splatters.
Now I'd like to talk about the videos. You said it was a random burglary, correct? Or looked like a random burglary?
There were no valuables that were missing, so it did not seem to be a burglary to me.
Your Honor, may I show a witness statement for purposes of impeachment?
You may.
Thank you. Yeah. Is this your signature?
I cannot see it.
I don't think, there you go. There you go. Thank you.
It's yours?
Yes.
Now, from lines 80 and 81, please read lines 80 and 81.
Says the evidence of the scene videos made it look like Brackman had interrupted a random burglary, but the fact that Brackman did criminal defense work raised the specter that this could be the work of a disgruntled ex-client.
And you just before said that it didn't appear like a burglary, correct?
I see it down below that it seemed very unlikely, but there's just something to consider that it might have been random burglary.
Okay. Now I would like to talk about the texts. You said, was Alex able to show you the text during your interview?
No, Alex was not. He happened to not have his phone with him, which actually made sense because you get pretty nervous when you're going to interview with the police. And so it makes sense that he forgot his phone, which is totally understandable. So he was able to send me screenshots of text messages later.
And did you verify that those text messages were valid?
They were just the text messages that I received, and so I used them.
But you never got a hold of the actual phone to see if they were the real text messages?
Unfortunately not, but I was able to talk to Alex and I trusted Alex.
All right. Now I'd like to talk about the phone tracing. You said in your report that they cover a fairly large area, correct?
Yes. Well, it depends on the cell tower. Some cell towers are different, but it just depends on the area.
You say they can also connect to many different towers?
That is very rare. They sometimes when a communication is made, if the cell tower, the closest one nearby, is very busy, it goes to a different one, but that rarely happens.
But it can happen.
There is a slight possibility, yes, but very rare.
Then your permission. 1 second. Now, in your statement, you say that 1 second. So you say you follow the so you say as an experienced investigator, you follow the evidence and you should also follow all possible leads, correct?
Yes.
But did you ever try to find Blair Rollins?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
Did you ever try to interview Blair Rollins?
I analyzed the evidence that was leading to Avery, and it seemed like the best lead, and so I went with that.
But you didn't But you didn't try to find anyone else?
Like I said, Avery Becker's lead seemed like the most valid lead to me.
Your permission to bring up Exhibit 22?
Very well, yes.
Is this the link to the audio recording from the Jonathan Rollins case?
I believe so, yes.
Your Honor, permission to play this recording?
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, the exhibit has not been admitted into evidence yet.
All right, I'll go ahead and sustain that objection at this time.
Your Honor, permission to admit Exhibit 22 evidence?
Mr. Goldberg, any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to lack of foundation.
Mr. Booth, what is your response?
Your Honor, I believe I laid a foundation when Detective Markowitz identified this link as the link to the recording, a recording from the Jonathan Rollins case.
All right, I do find that a sufficient foundation has been laid based on the testimony of this witness. She did testify that this link is what it purports to be. She has personal knowledge of it. So that objection as to lack of foundation is overruled. Anything else, Mr. Goldberg? Any other objection?
No, Your Honor.
Very well. Exhibit 22 is admitted.
Permission to play Exhibit 22, Your Honor.
That's granted.
I'll get you back, Blackman, if it's the last thing I do.
All right. So, Detective Markowitz, you heard that recording and did not try to follow up any other leads on Blair Rollins, correct?
I got this recording, but it didn't say anything about killing Brackman, so I decided to go with the Avery lead.
but it did say something about getting back at Brackman if it is the last thing he did.
Yes, but I just didn't mention killing, so I just went with the lead that makes the most sense to the case.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Ms. Markowitz, just for clarification, have you heard that recording before today's case?
Not really, so no.
And you, like when opposing counsel played this for you, that was the first time you had heard this?
Yes.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross, Mr. Booth?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective Markowitz, you say that you hadn't seen that or that recording before, correct?
That is correct.
But you just identified that as the link, correct?
It says it on the exhibit what it is.
Questions, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. We'll move to the next witness then for the prosecution, if there is one, Miss Berry. Who would you like to call, ma'am?
The prosecution would like to call Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
Very well.
Please state your name and spell your last for the court.
My name is Kyle Kuzak, K-U-Z-A-K.
And what is your profession?
I am a crime scene reconstruction investigator, also known as a CSR.
And what education does it take to become a CSR?
Well, in most cases, it requires at least a bachelor's degree.
How long have you been employed in this line of work?
I have been a CSR for 19 years and counting.
Where are you currently employed?
I'm currently a civilian employee at the Denver Police Department, and I have been for the last 3 years.
What types of crime scenes have you investigated in the past?
I've investigated tons of crime scenes in the 19 years that I've been a CSR, including home invasions, burglaries, and other property damages, as well as homicide, domestic violence, fatal accidents, and armed robberies.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I would like to establish Kyle Kuzak as an expert witness in crime scene reconstruction.
Any objection, Mr. Huffman?
Yes, Your Honor. I don't know the rule number, but objection to him being out of the school that he went to for 19 years.
Any response to that, Miss Berry?
I did not say he was at a school for 19 years. That was not what I said.
At this time, I am going to overrule that objection. I do find, based on the testimony given thus far, that he is qualified to testify as an expert in the field as tendered, and he will be so qualified. Go ahead, Miss Berry.
Thank you. Mr. Kuzak, can you explain the process you go through to come to your conclusions?
Of course. I go through a 5-step approach each time in order to have a thorough investigation, starting out with the collection and documentation of the crime scene and evidence. The second step is the collection of that evidence, which ones are the most important. The third step is evaluation of that evidence, preparing it for analysis and comparing relationships. And then the fourth step is hypothesis and testing, which is where I identify events in order to create a hypothesis. And then the final step is, of course, the reconstruction of the crime scene.
Your Honor, permission to show Exhibit 17 to opposing counsel and the witness.
That request is granted.
Mr. Kuzak, do you recognize Exhibit A?
Of course, this is the witness tracking sheet that we made.
And what is Exhibit 17?
This is the tracking sheet that I made in order to summarize the most important information from the case, as well as analyzing the suspects and the witnesses, and just, collecting the evidence and information that I gathered from their testimony.
Is Exhibit 17 true and accurate?
Sorry, you cut out. What was that question?
Is Exhibit 17 true and accurate?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to admit Exhibit 17 as into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Huffman?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 17 is so admitted.
Thank you. Mr. Cusack, did you visit the crime scene in person?
Of course, yes, I did.
And was this helpful for your investigation?
Yes, it was very helpful. It helped me to gather the most important information, as well as putting the events and organizing them into chronological order.
Thank you. And what did the defendant do upon first entering the victim's property?
From what I could see, the intruder appeared to approach the main entrance, checking if they could enter that way. When it was locked, they went to the rear entrance, and that is where they ultimately ended up entering the house.
Can you, Your Honor, permission to pull up Exhibit 12?
Yes.
And can you play this? Thank you. Mr. Cusack, what was that?
That was the intruder entering the house from the back door.
What significance do you see from this?
Well, in these Ring videos, it appears that the intruder is the relative, very similar, in fact, height and build of the defendant, Avery Becker, and indicating from their physical contact, that indicates that they seem to be unaware that the victim was home at that time.
Thank you. And was Mr. Brackman aware of the defendant before his entrance?
Yes.
And what evidence do we have of this?
Well, first of all, he would have gotten a notification from the Ring videos that were set up around his house. He would have heard the back door open, as well as there was a knife block and a knife drawer open, which indicates that Mr. Brackman had likely armed himself prior to the entrance of the intruder.
Thank you. In your opinion, as an expert witness, what happened on March 6, 2020 at the home of Mackenzie Brackman?
In my expert opinion, on the day of March 6, 2020, at the residence of Mackenzie Brackman, a perpetrator matching a very similar height and build of the defendant, Avery Becker, entered the property of Mr. Brackman, initially unaware that he was present, with the initial intent to trash the house, but was then surprised to see that he was actually present at the house at that time, which led to the ensuing struggle, which unfortunately ended up in the murder by the intruder, Avery Becker of Coach Brackman.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any cross-examination, Mr. Huffman?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Your Honor, permission to show the witness evidence or exhibit number 5 that has already been admitted to evidence.
You may.
Mr. Cusack, can you tell me what this exhibit is?
That is the knife that was used to kill Mackenzie Brackman.
So is this knife any of the knives that you've seen in the knife block before or in the knife drawer?
Well, I didn't see it in the knife drawer as it was on the ground after the crime scene.
Yes, but the knife doesn't match any other knife in any of the other pieces of evidence, does it?
Well, it doesn't match the knives in the knife block. However, it could have come from the drawer.
Okay. Moving on from that. So, talking about the Ring videos, you said you can match the height and build. What if the intruder was wearing baggy clothes like you can see in the videos.
Can you please elaborate on your question? I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
The intruder in the videos were wearing baggy clothes. So how could you identify the build and height?
I don't believe I said anywhere that they were wearing baggy clothes.
I'm not talking about anywhere you said it. I was talking about in the videos that you supposedly said you watched. Your Honor, may I show co-counsel and witness exhibit 60 or 60 or 12, please?
Yes, you may.
Is this the link for the video from the Ring cameras?
Yes, it is. It is one of them. Yes.
Your Honor, may exhibit 12 be introduced and now labeled as evidence?
I believe it's been admitted previously, so if you'd like to play it, you may do so.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So as you can see in the video, the intruder is wearing baggy clothes. Can you deny that?
Can you define baggy? Because I'm not an expert in defining baggy clothes. So my job is just to analyze their height and build, which I found very similar to the defendant Avery Becker.
Baggy clothes is just something that it wouldn't fit him perfectly.
Okay.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Very well. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Cusack, even if a person is wearing baggy clothes, can you still identify their general height and build?
Of course. Judging from the Ring videos, I was easily able to detect that the height and build were very similar to the defendant Avery Becker.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any recross, Mr. Huffman?
So, yes, Your Honor. So Kyle Cusack, are you able to even know if it's a man or a woman on the cameras?
No, there was no way of knowing what the gender was.
So how would you be able to know the build and height?
Well, it doesn't matter.
Objection. That was an out of scope question.
Mr. Huffman?
Your Honor, this is not an out of scope question, as the witness was questioned by the counsel saying they were wearing baggy clothes, and then he answered saying something about the build and height.
I agree. So the witness can answer the question if he knows the answer to the question.
Yes, could you please restate that question?
So since you can't understand that the intruder was a man or woman, how could you tell the general height and build?
Well, it doesn't matter on the gender of the intruder, but based on the videos, I could easily tell what the general height and build was of the intruder, no matter what their gender was.
You can't determine the general height and build because of the clothes that they were wearing.
No, that's not right. I still could tell their height and build.
Your Honor, no further questions.
All right, very well. For the prosecution, any additional evidence or testimony?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Do the people rest then?
Yes.
Very well. We'll turn to the defendant's case, if any. Mr. Booth, would you like to call your first witness, sir?
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to call Avery Becker to the stand.
All right. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Booth, you may inquire.
Avery, what high school did you graduate from?
I Graduated from CHS, Colorado High School.
And did you do any extracurriculars?
I did mock trial.
And was Coach Brackman your coach?
He was.
What team were you on?
I was on the A team.
Were you bumped down a team?
I was bumped down to the B team after Coach Brackman repeatedly told me I had been lazy and not very hardworking. I showed up late to practice. And, well, that's when he demoted me.
And were you ever put back on the A team?
I was, after my good friend Taylor Perkins stepped down and let me back on.
And what was Coach Brackman's response to this?
Obviously, he was very happy as me and him have the best relationship, but he had no other choice given that I was the only one qualified to.
Honor?
Yes, Ms. Berry.
Speculation?
Speculation is the objection. Mr. Booth, to you, what is your response?
May I confer with my co-counsel real quick?
Yes, you may.
Your Honor, we have established that Avery was on the mock trial team and Coach Brackman was the coach, and that this was a direct conversation between Avery and the coach.
Any response to that, Ms. Berry?
I was not referring to the conversation. I was referring to the witness's assumption of Mr. Brackman's attitude or personality or character traits, I guess.
I think that's something you can certainly take up on cross-examination, but at this time, I'm going to go ahead and overrule the objection. So you may continue, Mr. Booth.
Thank you, Your Honor. Avery, what happened after regionals?
After regionals, you came back after I had won the Best Attorney Award and the Best Clothing Award. And that's when I assumed Mr. Brackman would congratulate me, though he had scolded me more so because I had gone off script and I had made my own clothing.
And what happened after that?
After that, me and him got into a little fight, more of an arguing back and forth, as I was upset that he didn't congratulate me for winning these two great awards. Me and him then stormed out of the room in rage.
And then what happened?
Then I did something very stupid. I went to go write on the front of his brand new white Porsche, Worst Attorney Award in what I thought was dry erase marker. I had no idea it was permanent marker until after I had wrote the words.
And did you try to apologize?
I tried to apologize many times. I even called my friend Alex Fuentes to see if he could reason with Coach Brackman, but he would not listen to me.
And on March 5th, the day before the murder, where were you after school?
The day before the murder, I was at the Fry Shack with my good friend Taylor Perkins.
And do you remember leaving with your phone?
No, I did not leave with my phone.
And so what were you doing all day on March 6th?
Me and Taylor Perkins were going to the mall during the morning and the Fry Shack later to look for it, as I had no idea where I had left it.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Berry, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready, you may proceed.
Mr. Becker, Your relationship with Ms. Kenzie Brackman was unfriendly, wasn't it?
What was that word again?
Unfriendly.
Unfriendly? Yes, that is true.
And Mr. Brackman never acknowledged your strengths, did he?
No.
His misunderstanding and abuse of natural talent made you pretty frustrated, didn't it?
It made me frustrated.
And you played pranks on Mr. Brackman, didn't you?
What was that?
You played pranks on Mr. Brackman?
I don't really call them pranks. I did use small suggestive like emotions and dialogue to make him a little more angry, but
and when Mr. Brackman came down to the B team, it made you angry, correct?
that made me very upset.
Added on to that already simmering resentment, didn't it?
Yes.
And when Mr. Brackman got on you again, after winning your 2 awards at Montreal Regionals, you lost control of your emotions, didn't you?
I wouldn't say I lost control, but I definitely snapped.
And you drew on Mr. Brackman's car?
I did, with no intent.
And you said before that you believed it was a dry erase marker?
Yes.
And why did you believe it was a dry erase marker?
Because I was about to write on the board with it, the things I had done well for the team, but before I could do that, Brackman came in to scold me.
In your experience in the everyday high school classroom, it is not very likely to find a permanent marker on a dry erase marker stand. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. And when Mr. Brackman kicked you off the team, you would get back at Brackman if it was the last thing you did, didn't you?
I would. I did say that.
And earlier, you mentioned that you called Alex Cifuentes to help you get back on the team.
Yes. Well, not called.
That is what you said earlier.
Yes.
And evidence has been found of a text message you sent to Alex Cifuentes with your intentions to trash Brackman's house?
Yes.
Thank you. So looking back over your mock trial career, you sometimes allowed your resentment and frustration to get the better of you. And
yes.
And control you and cause you to do things you wouldn't otherwise have done.
Probably, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirect, Mr. Booth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So Avery, where were you on March 6th?
I was at the mall with Taylor Perkins, and then I went to the Fry Shack later.
And were you gone all day?
I was gone all day.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
All right, very well. For the defense, Ms. Orr, your next witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Defense would like to call Taylor Perkins to the stand.
All right. Whenever you're ready, you may inquire.
Yes, our timekeeper is just getting up, set up, so I will ask for a brief moment, please. All right, may I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Will you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Yes, Taylor Perkins, Perkins.
Where did you graduate high school?
I graduated at Colorado High School.
And while in high school, did you participate in any extracurricular activities?
Yes, I participated in a mock trial.
Who was on your mock trial team?
Avery Becker and Alex Fuentes were on my mock trial team.
And how did you get interested in mock trial?
I only did it because Avery Becker told me he was doing it freshman year.
All right, and who coached your mock trial team?
Mackenzie Brackman was the coach.
What was your relationship like with Mr. Brackman?
I thought he was an okay coach and even more okay attorney.
And what was Avery and Mr. Brackman's relationship like?
They would get into feuds a lot of the time because Avery had a hard time preparing for practice each day. And so they would get into feuds all the time and they would kind of push each other's buttons.
Did you ever get involved in Mr. Becker and Mr. Brackman's fights?
No, they were kind of funny to me and more amusing, but I stayed out of it.
And can you elaborate on what happened before your regional tournament last year?
Yes. So Avery turned up late and he was the most unprepared that I have ever seen. And this got Mr. Brackman very mad and ended up demoting Avery to the B team.
So did Avery stay on the B team?
No, I knew that Avery cared much more about mock trial than I did. And so I decided to step down in order so that he could be back on the A team. He was definitely A team material.
And can you tell me what you did on March 5th?
Yes. So after Avery got kicked off the team, he came over to my house and we played some games on our phones. And then we went to the Fry Shack where a lot of the mock trial team was there.
Did anyone from your mock trial team talk to you or Avery while you were at the Fry Shack?
Yes, a lot of them came over and talked to Avery about how sad it was that he got kicked off the team, including Alex Fuentes.
Was it usual for Alex to hang out with you and Avery?
No, neither of us like Alex very much at all.
And can you tell me what happened, what Avery's reaction was to your conversation with Alex, excuse me?
Yes, Avery started getting really frustrated and ended up storming off to the bathroom and left his phone on the table.
Was it unusual for Avery to leave his phone?
Yes, it was. He loved his phone.
And can you tell me what you did the morning of March 6th?
Yes, we had gone to the mall the previous night, and when we realized that his phone was gone, we realized when he came to pick me up for school, we realized he didn't have his phone because he wasn't responding to my texts. And so we ended up retracing our steps in the mall all morning. And after that, we went to the Fry Shack to see the afternoon shift to see if they'd seen his phone. And we also went to my house to check for it.
All right. So just to clarify, how long were you and Avery looking for his phone at the mall?
All morning.
Your Honor, no further questions.
All right. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you. You are friends with Avery Becker, correct?
Yes.
And it's also correct that neither you or Avery thought very highly of Mr. Brackman.
That is true.
And it's also correct that you and Avery both find that Avery is the best on the mock trial team.
I did think he was the best on the mock trial team. He had a talent of making things up on the fly.
Would it be safe to say that you think that without Avery, the mock trial team would be bad?
I do think that they wouldn't have been able to make state very well. It was when he was kicked off the team.
And it's also correct that Avery and Mr. Brackman were on bad terms.
Yes, they were having feuds constantly.
And Avery did play pranks on Mr. Brackman before Avery vandalized Mr. Brackman's car, correct?
Avery had times where he would get mad at him, but I don't remember times where he would play pranks on him.
I believe it does say in your witness statement that Avery did play pranks on Mr. Brackman.
Yes.
Thank you. And moving on, it's correct that you and Avery both have a first period release, correct?
Yes.
And you met up when you were going to drive to school, correct?
Yes.
So you really weren't with Avery for the whole of that day, were you?
No, we met on the way to school, which
Exactly, which would be after your first period release, correct?
Yes,
So you were not with Avery for the whole of that day?
but the first
Yes or
period
no?
wouldn't not be that long.
Were you with Avery for the whole of that day, yes or no?
We were after our first period release, which was not very long.
So it's correct that you were not with Avery for the whole of that day.
Yes.
Thank you, no further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
So as stated on cross-examination, you and Avery do you have a first period release?
Yes.
Or did you have a first period release?
Yes.
And normally, how long are your periods at school?
I'd say 45 minutes.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No.
Very well. Mr. Huffman, are you ready to call your next witness for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Brief moment to change my name.
That's fine, of course.
Defense would like to call Detective Blake Van Owen to the stand, please.
Very well. Whenever you're ready, you may engage in direct.
Good morning, Detective Van Owen. Please introduce yourself to the court.
I am Detective Blake Van Owen, VANOWEN. I am a private investigator, professor, and an expert witness in police practices.
And how long have you been a professor?
About 13 years.
What do you teach as a professor?
I teach police practices.
Prior to being a professor, what did you do for a living?
I was working with the Aurora Police Department.
How long were you with them?
About 6 years.
And what did you do for the police department?
A brief moment, please. I was a police officer.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to offer Detective Blake Van Owen to the court as an expert witness in police practices.
All right, for the prosecution, any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, lack of foundation.
Mr. Huffman.
Your Honor, I provided the foundation by asking what he did for a living, which being a professor, teaching police practices as well as being a police officer prior to that. I believe that is foundation enough for him to be counted as an expert witness.
All right, I will overrule the objection at this time. I'll allow the witness to testify as an expert in the fields tendered by the defense. The rest of it will be subject to cross-examination in the court's opinion. So you may proceed, Mr. Huffman.
Detective, did you put a report in for this case?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Have you worked with other people in this courtroom before?
Yes.
And so going to the videos, the user can turn off notifications from the device, correct?
That is correct.
So with that being said, it's possible that Mackenzie Brackman didn't know that there was an intruder at his door.
That is also correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, very well. Mr. Goldberg.
May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
How long did you work with the Aurora Police Department?
13 years.
Mr. Van Owen, you prepared a statement for today's case, correct?
Yes.
And you are aware that you had up until today to make any changes? Permission to show the court Exhibit 20.
That's granted.
Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, I wrote it.
And what is it?
Is my expert report.
You're under permission to admit Exhibit 20 as evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 20 is so admitted.
All right. Now, Mr. Van Owen, if you could read from line 6, starting at I also.
I do not see that.
In the first paragraph, 6 lines down and about halfway through the paragraph, or the line.
I also served as a member of the department for a 9-month period between 2005 and 2006. I have served as an expert witness in over.
Sorry, I forgot to tell you where to stop. Thank you. If we could take that exhibit down. Oh, excuse me. Stop sharing the screen. Thank you. Now, you left the police force because you disagreed with it, correct?
Correct.
And you disliked several of their practices, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you only testify in court for the defense, right?
Right.
And because of that, you often testify against the police, correct?
Your Honor.
Yes, Mr. Huffman.
Relevance?
Mr. Goldberg.
This goes to the credibility of the witness.
Any final word, Mr. Huffman?
Why does a period 5 years before this case determine the credibility of the witness?
I don't know, Mr. Goldberg.
I am not talking about something 5 years before.
Why don't you give me an offer of proof?
My question was that that because the witness only testifies in the court for the defense, they often testify against police.
All right. I'll find that's a sufficient offer of proof. So you may continue with this line of questioning, Mr. Goldberg. The objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
So because you only testify in court for the defense, you often end up testifying against police, correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Van Noen, are you biased against the police?
In some cases, yes.
And you're being paid a substantial amount for testifying today, correct?
Can you please restate the question?
Objection, Your Honor.
Mr. Huffman.
Relevance again.
Mr. Goldberg, your response.
This also goes to the credibility of the witness.
All right, I'm going to agree, overruled.
Sorry, would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
You are being paid a significant amount for testifying here today, correct?
Yes.
And you know Kyle Kuzak, correct?
Yes, I do know him.
And you state in your statement that Kuzak is a little egotistic, correct?
I just state that in my statement, correct.
Are you biased against Kyle Kuzak?
Some.
And you also know Detective Markowitz, correct?
Yes, I do.
And in your statement, you called Detective Markowitz a defective, correct?
I said that he had overlooked some things.
But you do use the word defective when describing the detective, correct?
Yes.
Are you biased against Detective Markowitz as well?
Yes.
Okay, now if we could pull up Exhibit 7. Thank you. Now, Mr. Van Noen, are you aware that your direct examination did not acknowledge this exhibit?
That is correct.
And are you aware that earlier in this trial, Kyle Kuzak testified that the knife used in the murder could have come out of this drawer?
Yes, that is correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Very well, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, whenever you're ready, you may inquire.
Detective, you could say that a lot of expert witnesses get paid for what they do, correct?
Yes.
And going to Exhibit 7, Your Honor, may I show the witness Exhibit 7?
You may.
So this is the, sorry. So this is the knife drawer. Most of the times, as you can see, there are knives that have similar patterns in there, correct?
That is correct.
And even though that knife in Exhibit 6 is a different.
Are out of scope of my cross-examination.
Mr. Huffman, how is this within the scope?
It's within the scope because he was talking about the knife in both Exhibit 7 and Exhibit 6. He just never actually said Exhibit 6.
All right, the objection's overruled. Go ahead.
So the knife in Exhibit 6 is a different type than any exhibit or any knife in Exhibit 7.
That is correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
All right, for the defense, any additional evidence or testimony?
No, Your Honor. Defense rests.
Any rebuttal from the prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
All right. A closing argument for the prosecution, Mr. Goldberg.
Yes, may I proceed?
You may.
May it please the court. Your Honor, members of the jury, and opposing counsel, we are here today because of resentment. Resentment is a fire that burns away the truth, a poison that kills the conscience, and an acid that corrodes the foundations of justice. On March 6, 2020, resentment claimed the life of Mackenzie Brackman. Enraged by his coach's constant pleas to take competition seriously, to stop making things up on the fly and putting the whole team at risk, Avery Becker vandalized Brackman's car. The ink was permanent. Mackenzie Brackman had to look at the words "Worst Attorney Award" every day until he died. Like any sane person, Brackman kicked Becker off of his team. Becker decided to get payback for the consequence he deserved, while in the process of vandalizing his house because the car wasn't enough. Becker was surprised by Brackman. In the struggle, Brackman was killed. Avery Becker is guilty of burglary in the second degree, having knowingly entered a dwelling unlawfully with the intent to commit criminal mischief and damage another person's property. Avery Becker is guilty of murder in the first degree, having in the furtherance of committing second-degree burglary caused the death of a person. As the prosecution, we are given the burden of proof to prove to you, the jury, that each of these accusations are true beyond a reasonable doubt. I hope you will agree that we have done so. You heard today that Alex Cifuentes, friend and teammate of the defendant, witnessed Avery's resentment firsthand. Becker acted like the victim when he was actually the cause of the problem, committed vandalism out of anger, and was prepared to take it one step further. No one could have imagined how many steps further Becker actually took it. You heard from Detective Jordan Markowitz, who was first on the scene and found that all the evidence pointed to Avery Becker. Becker's phone was traced in the vicinity of the crime scene, and he sent text messages threatening to vandalize Brackman's house. You heard that Kyle Kuzak used his experience to reconstruct the crime scene and concluded once again that Avery Becker killed Brackman. The evidence showed the order of events in which the crime took place and showed it was the defendant that fit the picture. You've heard from Becker himself, who admits that he let his anger control his actions. You heard from Taylor Perkins, the defendant's alibi, who is the defendant's partner in everything and would do anything for them. She stepped down from the mock trial team, and it's hardly a stretch to imagine that she would lie for her best friend. You've heard from Blake Van Owen that the prosecution's case was faulty, but Van Owen's case does not address several important pieces of evidence that point to the defendant. The knife that killed Mackenzie Brackman could have come from the open drawer, not the knife block. And additionally, Van Owen has significant reason to be biased against the prosecution. If you find Avery Becker not guilty, you let a dangerous killer walk free, a person consumed by resentment. How many more lives would be taken? What atrocities would be committed because a resentful murderer was free? For the sake of all people, we ask that you find Avery Becker guilty.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. For the defense, Mr. Huffman, your closing argument, sir.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. May I proceed?
You may.
May it please the court. Opposing counsel, members of the jury. Opposing counsel. Thank you. In this case, the defense questioned Detective Jordan Markowitz, Kyle Kuzak, Alex Fuentes, Blake Van Owen, the defendant Avery Becker, and Taylor Perkins. The defendant Avery Becker is not a killer, but a simple used-to-be high schooler, very committed to mock trial. He was supported by a very good friend when he got wrongly kicked off the A team. After a case where he simply did things different than his coach. Afterwards, his friend Taylor Perkins texted him saying that what the coach did was unfair and that he would quit the mock trial team, so Mr. Brackman would have to put the defendant on the A team again. Eventually, a disagreement got too far, and Avery Becker got kicked off the mock trial team. And then when Avery was outside, he saw the coach's car and wrote on it with a pen he thought was dry erased. Worst attorney award. This got rid of any possibilities of getting back on the team. Once he got home and had time to think, he tried to talk to Mr. Brackman, but he wouldn't talk to Avery at this point. All he wanted to do was reverse his bad decision. He offered to get a job just to repaint the coach's car and tried to get others to see if he would be able to talk to the coach since Mr. Brackman wasn't willing to talk to Avery. If he felt guilty after writing on his card, he would look much more guilty after killing the person he was just trying to talk to so he could get back on the mock trial team. He left his phone at the fry shack, and the next day he was searching for his phone with a friend named Taylor Perkins. And did Detective Markowitz bother to track Taylor Perkins to see where he was? No, he didn't. This all seems excessive, but it all points to the undoubtable fact of Avery Becker's innocence in the murder of Mackenzie Brackman. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Huffman. Rebuttal, Mr. Goldberg.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what you've just heard from my opposing counsel is that Taylor Perkins would do anything to help her friend Avery. The phone that was missing was located within the residence of Mackenzie Brackman. And if Taylor would do anything to help Avery, then it's certainly possible that she would lie to keep him from a sentence. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Goldberg. Thank you all for your presentations. Excellent work. We'll take a few moments now and give the scorekeepers a chance to tabulate their scores. I should get notice that that's been completed from one of the managers of these proceedings. Once I get that, we'll go over some comments and thoughts with the teams. So I'll turn off my video for now and give the scoring panelists a chance to go through their notes and issue their scores. And scoring panelists, once you've submitted your scores, you can just turn on your video. That way I'll know that you've done so and we're ready to move to the next step.
And Judge, this is Jeremy Savage. It's saying that I can't put my video on because you've stopped it or something. Is that
I did turn off your video during the course of the proceeding, so that may have been it. And I just sent you another note there that allows you to bring it up. We are getting some feedback from you, however. But with that being said, we'll see how this goes. Give me just one moment. I'm getting a communication from one of the managers. All right. Ms. Marisic, I'll go ahead and start with your thoughts, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica. I'm a public defender in Grand Junction. I wanted to say great job today. Good job going through and, oh, yeah, you're all in the same spot over there. Just some general feedback. I did mock trial both in high school and in college. So this is kind of like a soft spot in my heart to be doing this stuff. I think that there were some really great things that you were doing. I noticed some attorneys were doing signposting, right? You know, telling us what chapters they were in and their crosses and their directs. But I think everyone can stand to practice a little bit more of the impeachment procedure. I know it's a technically difficult thing, but it's easy to like run drills and just kind of do that over and over. The other thing I wanted to point out was redirects. I saw a couple of really good redirects of very specific things that left a question in my mind, and then you came back and answered it. That's the only time you really need to do a redirect in this kind of situation. So I thought that was really good. Last point on cross-examination, make sure you're asking closed questions. That includes when you're handling exhibits, every question out of your mouth should be closed except for very rare circumstances. So I noticed a couple attorneys kind of just defaulting back to that open question. So just keep that in mind. But overall, great job.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marisic. Mr. Fresher, your comments, please, sir.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Fresher. I'm a private practice attorney here in Grand Junction. So overall, I was also impressed with you guys, particularly your professionalism and your preparedness on the facts here. Some critiques that I had were, first off, a few of you could stand to speak more slowly and clearly, and to limit the ums and sort of the fillers that you use. Take a deep breath, take your time. I also had the comment of asking more pointed questions, leading questions on cross-examination. That would include also controlling your witness better and trying to get those yes or no, those sharp yes or no answers as possible, you know, in as polite a way as you can. And less reliance on notes if you can. But overall, nice work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fresher. Mr. Savage, your thoughts, please, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Savage, Mr. Savage, we're really struggling to hear you.
Still nothing?
That's a little bit better. Why? I'll give you another shot. Why don't you?
Hear me now?
I would
I'll
say
take one last shot. If it doesn't work, then I apologize. But overall, really good. No. I apologize. I'm trying to do this from my home. I normally do this at the office, so I apologize.
that's okay, Mr. Savage. I don't think it's going to work too well. We get every time you say it's not working or is it working, it comes through clearly, and then everything else kind of doesn't. But in any event, I'll give my thoughts. My name is Matthew Barrett. I'm a judge here in Grand Junction. I'm a district court judge. I used to do mock trial as a coach when I was a DA in Glenwood Springs. And since I've moved on to taking the bench, I've had the pleasure of presiding over a number of these mock trial competitions. And it's just something that I find to be very rewarding. And it's so great to see all of you working hard on what I would consider to be a very challenging thing to do for anybody, but especially for folks who are in high school juggling all the other things going on in your lives. I echo the comments of Ms. Marisich and Mr. Fresher, and probably what Mr. Savage would have said, but that is that you all did a good job. I agree with Mr. Fresher that some of the reliance on notes can be a detriment to the presentations. That's a big thing that can sometimes separate a good team from a great team. The ability of the participants to just know what it is that they're saying by heart. And of course, a glance or two at your notes as you go along is something that is always understood to be acceptable and kind of common, but really reading from the notes directly consistently can detract from the presentation. So that's something you should all be aware of. On one or two occasions, I heard a couple of attorneys refer to the witness by first name. That's something you need to always be mindful of. It's always Mr. or Mrs. And certainly never the first name of the individual that you're examining. Looking through some other notes I had here on cross-examination of witnesses, one of the things that you should always be mindful of, like Ms. Marisich said, is being careful about asking open-ended questions, but also knowing that sometimes you're just not going to get the answer you want. And if you don't get the answer you want, move on. You're not going to win. A long time ago, I was taught a phrase, and when it came to cross-examination of expert witnesses in particular, and that is, you don't get into a knife fight with a butcher. And that's because when you try and ask an expert questions about a topic that they're an expert on and you're not, they're going to wiggle away out of it. And you're never going to get the response that you want. And you're going to end up getting hurt in the process in terms of your case getting hurt. So if you don't get the answer you want out of the first question, even if you are 100% sure you're right, unless you've got it sitting in an affidavit that you can impeach that witness with right then and there, just move on. That's really what I had. I had some individual notes here, but I've been told to keep it short. So I'm not going to go through some of the individual comments that I have for each of you, but suffice it to say, you all did very well. You all had some very good strengths, and you all had some little things that could be worked on, I'm sure you're aware of, and I touched upon some of those things. So thank you all very much for your presentations today. I wish you all the best of luck as well. Keep it up. I don't think there's anything else we need to address today, and I think that's just how it ends. Is that right? Everyone shaking their head yes. Okay. Have a good rest of your morning, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.